Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Springer, and welcome to our monthly educational webinar series brought to you by BrainMD. Today, we're going to be talking about your memory. And if you are a loved one have trouble remembering words, faces, names, or maybe you're sometimes forgetful or feeling increasingly absent-minded, you are in the right place. We're going to be presenting several science-based solutions for you to supercharge your brain, stay mentally sharp, and help maintain your memory as you age. Now, just a couple of things before we get started. This webinar does have a chat feature where you can ask your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can during the last 10 minutes of the program. If we don't have time for all the questions, we'll be sending out an email with all of your answers along with the recorded version of this webinar within a week. And finally, everyone in attendance today will receive a 15% discount on our entire BrainMD store. We'll present that code at the end of the webinar and include it with our follow-up email. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the founder of BrainMD and a true memory expert. He's a multiple #1 New York Times bestselling author, including the critically acclaimed Memory Rescue book. Please say hello to Dr. Daniel Amen.
Hey, everybody. So excited to see all of you. My body is buzzing. I get to be with my friend, Dr. Paris Kidd. I always love these monthly seminar series. And I am going to kick this off. So I'm going to share my screen. Before we talk about memory, I want to tell you about a brand new book I have coming out in about 6 weeks called Your Brain is Always Listening. It's about the dragons that still breathe fire on your emotional brain. They're dragons from the past, like anxiety and grief and hopeless and helpless and should and shaming. There's 13 dragons from the past. But I also talk about addictions and give you a brand new 12-step program on how to beat addictions. You know, the 12-step program was developed in the 30s and has no neuroscience in it. So it's how to beat addictions using the best we know from neuroscience. And I put in the chat a link to a special event I'm going to do for 90 minutes on February 9th. It's free. And I also put the pre-order page for the book, Your Brain is Always Listening, because you pre-order. We actually have some really great gifts for you, including a coupon for a free bottle of my favorite BrainMD supplement, which is Happy Saffron. So like on Amazon, the book's probably $18. You'll get a $50 value. So, all right, enough for the commercial. I have some slides for you today. Usually Paris is the one with the slides, but my book, Memory Rescue, actually of all 15 public television specials I've done, this was our top special. And the book just did really great. And it's because this information is just needed now more than ever before. Many of you in attendance know the work at Amen Clinics is really based on the brain SPECT imaging work we do. SPECT is a study that looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. This is an example of a healthy scan, full, even, symmetrical activity. Now, I hate this. This is a slide I hate the most in the presentation. As we age, our brain gets less and less active. So typical 35-year-old healthy brain, 55-year-old brain with wrinkles, sort of like your face. The older you get, the more wrinkly it gets. An 85-year-old brain that just looks terrible. That's common, right? It's average. Now, here's my 92-year-old grandmother who had a stunningly beautiful brain, which reflected her cognitive abilities. She was cognitively sharp. until the day she died when she was 98. So aging is optional if you do the right things. This is what Alzheimer's disease looks like. And the problem with Alzheimer's disease, it actually starts in your brain decades before you have any symptoms. So this 59-year-old woman I diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease probably had negative changes in her brain already in her 20s. So those of you that are waiting to lose your memory before you decide to get healthy, you might want to rethink that. Memory rescue is based on one really simple idea. And that is, if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it if it's headed to the dark place, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And we came up with the mnemonic Bright Minds. So we actually have something called Bright Minds powder, and it's based on this mnemonic. You want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it if it's headed to the dark place. You have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. Now, I don't have time to go into all of them, but this is the functional medicine component that we do for our patients at Amen Clinics, and it is very effective. Now, obviously, the sooner you get on the program, the more effective it's going to be. But we've had many patients who had mild cognitive impairment, which means you're on your way to Alzheimer's disease, or people with early or even moderate Alzheimer's disease get significantly better on our Bright Minds program. The good news about the risk factors, almost all of them are preventable or treatable. One of my favorite patients, friends, Lisa Gibbons, you might have seen her on TV. Her grandmother and her mother died with Alzheimer's disease. As we became friends 20 years ago, I'm like, you should come see me. And she waited a couple of years, but when she came and saw me, her brain was headed to the dark place. Now, remember what I said, SPECT can tell years before people have any symptoms. By doing the Bright Minds program that I gave her, 10 years later, her brain's fuller, fatter, healthier. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. I mean, how exciting is that? I mean, she's on the plan for the rest of her life. Some of you may know we did the big NFL study at a time when the NFL was having trouble with the truth about traumatic brain injury in football. We published this study on 100 NFL players compared to healthy. Every area of their brain is lower. Not a big surprise. What was a surprise? What was the most exciting part of our NFL work is on our Bright Minds program, 80% of them were better blood flow, memory, attention, mood, and sleep. We published this study that showed particularly increased function to the front part of their brain. Here's one of our NFL players, Anthony Davis. He's the College Football Hall of Fame running back from USC. When he first came to see me, his brain looked terrible. He had memory problems. He was irritable, had periods of confusion, but he has been on Brain and Body Power Max, really my repair formula for, goodness, the last 14 years, my goodness. And I have his brain 10 years apart, and his brain continues to get better by doing the right things. So I just want to give you hope. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better, but the sooner you start, odds are the better that will be. So with that, go up to the top of the chat. You can sign up for my free event for Your Brain is Always Listening, or go to you'realwayslistening.com and get the really cool bonuses when you pre-order my new book. Okay. My pleasure to introduce the Chief Science Officer for BrainMD, my PhD in cell biology from UC Berkeley. He's really one of the world's experts on nutraceuticals and brain health, mental health. Actually, I don't know someone I respect more. Dr. Kidd, they're all yours.
Thanks for your usual kind introduction, Daniel. Welcome, everyone. Memory problems are scary, whether we have them or not. And the idea of not being able to keep the records of our life experience, or to hold on to experiences that we had years or months or even a day ago, the idea of having trouble keeping more than one thing in our head at the same time. All of these are very, very frightening, really scary, especially when someone says, don't worry about it. It happens as you get older. But none of this has to happen. There's no aging program that impairs memory. There's no programmed biology in the body that ensures that memory fades as people get older. And my 2 centenarian aunties in Florida can match anyone in their families for memory. But for the rest of us, what can we do to maximize our chances of having a great memory at age 100? So Daniel has so elegantly introduced the risk factors, those factors that increase your risk for losing your memory. And as you tackle these risk factors, you meaningfully improve your chances to have a truly bright mind. So we begin then, those of us who are fortunate, those of us who have not had difficulty during development in the womb, those of us who were not born malnourished or born to malnourished mothers, will usually by around the age of 22 or so have a really great memory. But then as time goes by, we can begin to develop what's called subjective cognitive impairment, which is a situation in which we ourselves realize that we're not as sharp memory-wise as we used to be. And this usually is not directly measurable on the typical psychometric tests. But then if you don't take on the risk factors, you have a high risk of proceeding into what's called mild cognitive impairment, which I consider to be a misnomer, because at that point, the cognitive impairment is not so mild. It's at the point where it's actually interfering with your productivity and with the quality of your life. So MCI then is a stage beyond which you're at elevated risk of transitioning into Alzheimer's or other dementia as the years go by. Now, we know that half of all people with MCI don't necessarily progress into dementia, so it's not inevitable. But MCI arguably is the last stage at which to get a full reversal, a full rescue of memory, to get it back to the point behind SCI and to a point where you can once again have a great memory. So Daniel's memory rescue book I think, is just an incredible tour de force on memory. I strongly urge you to get this book. Whatever your situation, even if you don't have a serious memory problem yet, this book will give you valuable information on how to live a healthy lifestyle, how to minimize your brain risk factors, which are practically the same risk factors for your heart and circulation, your immune system, your other organs, your entire body. So as you fix the Bright Minds risk factors, you're basically fixing all of your health. Then we worked together as a team to develop the Amen Clinic Memory Rescue Protocol, which is a comprehensive program for diagnosing your problem and rescuing your memory, no matter how bad it may be. And taking supplements is central to this memory rescue protocol, as is diet and exercise. The Memory Rescue book is a treasure trove of advice on diet. So that alone makes the book worth reading and keeping very close. Let's get into the supplements that are covered in the book and which I keep very close track of. I'm constantly in the clinical and other scientific literature. And Daniel is very kind to allow me as much freedom as he does to keep up with the developments in nutraceutical and other nutritional sciences. And one of the things that's clear is that Americans are short on many nutrients. The United States government does ongoing surveys which are published. They're analyzed by academics and published in the most high-level peer-reviewed scientific journals. And these document that there are widespread deficiencies in Americans' dietary intakes of nutrients that are very, very, very important. So more than 93% of us aren't getting enough vitamin D from our diet. More than 85% aren't getting enough vitamin E, more than 54% not enough magnesium, more than 45% not enough vitamin A, more than 43% not enough vitamin C, more than 90% aren't getting enough omega-3, EPA, and DHA, which are practically vitamins because the body is very, very poorly efficient at making them from other types of omega-3s that come from plant foods. The dietary sources of omega-3, EPA, and DHA are very limited, basically cold water fish, and more than 9 in 10 of all Americans aren't getting sufficient amounts. And then we know that nutrient deficiencies can impair memory. And by the way, when I do this kind of research, I'm not reading secondary sources on the internet. I'm not looking at urban legend. I'm following the peer-reviewed clinical and other scientific literature. And so we find that deficiencies in all of these nutrients can lead to impairment of memory in humans. Vitamin A, C, D. Vitamin D is particularly interesting because there's great debate around it now about the COVID situation. But meta-analyses, that is pooling of data from multiple clinical trials, establish that vitamin D deficiency also impairs memory. B1, B3, B5, B6. B6 is particularly interesting because it causes seizures in infants, and certain treatments that can be given to infants will actually tend to deplete B6. And folate, low levels of folate in earlier life predict cognitive decline, memory and other cognitive decline over the longer term. So if you're low in folate in middle age, which is pretty easy to be at because folate is really abundant only in leafy green vegetables. That's where the name comes from, folium for leaf. And similarly with vitamin B12, low levels earlier in life predict later decline. So these deficiencies are part of the situation of maybe not taking such good care of ourselves in midlife or early life, and then progressing into having serious problems as we get older. Vitamin K1 deficiency, iron deficiency, quite dramatic. Iron is an interesting case. We carry a very good iron supplement, but we only recommend that people take it if they are tested and found deficient in iron, because iron supplementation that leads to high iron levels can actually impair memory. So iron is very, very much requiring a sweet spot where you really need to know that you're deficient before you would want to supplement it. Magnesium deficiency is a serious problem. We know that well over half of all Americans aren't getting enough in their diet. Omega-3 EPA and DHA. And then lutein, which is one nutrient that has emerged within the past decade as being practically a vitamin. It's the yellow-orange stuff that gets into the back of the eye, that gets into the retina. And it's absolutely crucial for vision and for discriminating against glare in terms of quality of vision, and as an antioxidant to protect against damage to the retina by light, because light can be damaging. So lutein we know is essential for the electrical activity of the retina. And last several years, research has shown that it's also built up in the brain, particularly in the hippocampus and the cortex, which are the main memory zones. And supplementation of lutein can actually improve memory. So we get that from leafy greens and certain squashes and so on. And we know that you need at least 200 grams. That's almost a half a pound of veggies per day in order to get enough lutein. Therefore, we've been putting it routinely in our supplements. Now, there are major stressors. As we're going through life, there are all kinds of things that deplete nutrients. And again, this is found, proven, documented through scientific investigations. So I'll start on the right side first. Infections by viruses, bacteria, any other type of infectious agent, they tend to hijack our cellular machinery and deplete, burn away nutrients. Alcohol is terrible because it affects not only the liver, but also the lining of the intestinal tract. So ongoing alcohol intake can damage the entire gastrointestinal lining, and there is no minimum amount that is proven to be safe. Smoking, I need not say anything except that any form of smoking will deplete nutrients. Any hot material going into the lungs. Surgery, other illness, burns, inhaled air pollutant, particles, dust, fibers, pesticides, herbicides, lead, mercury, all the environmental pollutants, the industrial chemicals, practically anything that is synthetic and does not have a chemical structure with which the body is familiar is a potential toxin and depleter of nutrients. Excessive UV exposure and even phototherapy of newborns who have high bilirubin levels, I found out, can deplete calcium, vitamin C, and even melatonin, which is our major sleep hormone, but which also has all sorts of important physiological functions. Then on the left side, we get into the medications. And I'm so glad that at my advanced age, I don't have to be taking one medication. The nutrients so far are taking very good care of me. So over-the-counter drugs, acid suppressing drugs, proton pump inhibitors, histamine 2 receptor antagonists, aspirin even, acetaminophen. I've been railing against acetaminophen for decades because we know that acetaminophen burns away antioxidants from inside of our cells. And acetaminophen intake can lead to liver crisis and death. Prescription drugs. Well, the list can go on forever, but these are the ones that are most well documented. Anticonvulsants, the chlorpromazine antipsychotic, possibly others, practically all the antihypertensive blood pressure drugs, the aminoglycoside antibiotics, and most of the other antibiotics, statins, metformin, corticosteroids, oral contraceptives, the so-called epidermal growth factor receptor drugs, and calcineurin inhibitors. So if you are on a medication, it's very important to find out from an authoritative source whether that particular medication is known to deplete particular nutrients and then supplement with those nutrients. The references at the bottom, of course, indicate the major sources for this information, and I'm willing to provide the references. Unlike a lot of so-called experts, I actually read the references before I cite them. Now, just to remind you of how central nutrients are to our existence, they're absolutely crucial to make energy. So that red body here indicates the body of a mitochondrion. Each of our cells has 100 or more mitochondria roughly, and these are where 90% or more of our energy is made. So before getting into the mitochondrion, in the cytoplasm of the cell, some basic transformations are done of fatty acids, sugars, amino acids, and these require, starting from the top there, vitamin B3, B1, B2, B5, vitamin C for fatty acids. Then when you get into the mitochondrion, where most of the action occurs, you get B8, which is biotin, iron, magnesium, and B6 and B12. So we need such a huge diversity of nutrients just to make energy. And then we also need an even wider range of nutrients to use that energy in order to carry out the housekeeping of the body and to do all of the biochemical and metabolic transformations that keep us alive and make us human. So the whole thing here about vitamins and certain minerals and a number of other nutrients that the body may be able to make small amounts of, but also needs from the diet, like EPA, omega-3, EP, and DHA, coenzyme Q10, and so on. We need these to be alive. It's not optional as to whether we get them. It's very hard to get many of these from the standard American diet. Even a person who is really rigorous with their diet and is spending hundreds of dollars a month to get the most organic foods and so on, may not be getting, for example, sufficient vitamin B12 because plants don't provide B12, as one example. So it's really important to understand the limitations of the diet and also to understand that you in particular may have particular genetic limitations, particular mutations that impair your ability to use certain nutrients effectively. And one of the Bright Minds risk factors is genetics. So part of it is that we look at your genetics related to memory decline. And if you turn out to have an ApoE4 gene, either one copy or two copies, you really need to right away get into the most comprehensive memory rescue protocol, because ApoE4 interferes with the benefits that many nutrients can give you through supplementation or through diet. So now, even the genetic risk factors can be at least partially compensated for. But this is just to show you just how integral nutrients are to our survival and mental performance. And to indicate the power of nutrients used as supplements, just 3 B vitamins were found to slow cognitive decline. So at Oxford University, a 2-year trial, a nice long trial, very well set up, very well controlled, randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blind, 156 elderly people with mild cognitive impairment received vitamins B6, B12, and folate or a placebo. Their brain cortical density was tracked using MRI, and their cognitive function was tracked using psychometric testing. And over that period of 2 years, those who received the placebo, the top image on the left there, those yellow zones, lost about 3.5% of their cortical density. So you can do some fairly simple math and realize that over 10 years, they could be losing 17%, and that would take them deep into dementia. Those who received the B vitamins lost only 0.5% of their cortical density. And the degree of atrophy correlated with the cognitive decline that was measured using the psychometric tests. So those who got just these 3 B vitamins might have a 2.5% or so atrophy over 10 years. But if you would then add in all the benefits that come from the other B vitamins, the other vitamins outside of the B group, the essential minerals, the conditionally essential nutrients such as omega-3, EPA, and DHA, you might deduce that comprehensive supplementation gives a person a decent chance of minimizing cognitive decline as the years and decades go by. So when I came to work with Daniel 6 years ago, he already had this beautiful NeuroVite Plus multiple, which is the most comprehensive multiple in the world. I helped him to upgrade it some. I upgraded some of the ingredients, but the basic concept was just excellent. It has more than 50 active ingredients, including 22 vitamins and essential minerals, including choline, which was recently discovered to be essential from our diet, and which is a building block for acetylcholine, the main neurotransmitter required for learning and memory. It has 4 of these conditionally essential nutrients, nutrients that that many people don't make enough of in their body to have optimal function. That is coenzyme Q10, alpha lipoic acid, lutein, and zeaxanthin, which tends to go along with lutein. It has 2 clinically proven brain nutrients, including phosphatidylserine, which is the best documented of all nutrients for memory function, and acetylcarnitine. And the amounts of phosphatidylserine and acetylcarnitine in this multiple alone are more than you'll find in many so-called cognitive formulas. So NeuroVite Plus is really a very powerful support for memory and other brain function. It has 8 fruit and vegetable concentrates. It has 5 digestive enzymes, and it doesn't have inferior ingredients like beta carotene, which is not guaranteed to be converted to vitamin A, even though many, if not most multiples have beta carotene. It has no function in the body except to be converted to vitamin A, and yet some people have mutations that cause them to not convert it efficiently. Folic acid is a synthetic substance, doesn't occur in nature. The body has to use 3 enzymes to convert it. Instead, we use methylfolate, which requires no conversion. It's absorbed very smoothly and goes right to work. We have no magnesium oxide because that's not absorbed. And we don't have cyano vitamin B12. Cyano stands for cyanide. And so we have methyl vitamin B12, which again is very smoothly absorbed. And we have a sufficient amount of methyl B12 that a person taking NeuroVite Plus would have very little need to ever get an injection of B12. So I think it's actually very scary that so many multiples have a vitamin B12 with cyanide. And I wondered why. And when I looked it up, I learned that vitamin B12 was discovered in a bacterium, a blue-green bacterium that can handle it as cyanide. But our body has to first remove the cyanide. And this is a risk for smokers and for certain women who may be taking certain oral contraceptives. So just an excellent multiple and a really good foundation for memory and other brain function. Then we go to omega-3s, which are builders of cell membranes. And cell membranes are thin but continuous sheets of molecules that enclose the cell and form compartments inside the cell that are specialized for particular cell functions. Membranes are loaded with enzymes and other active proteins that do most of the work of the cell. But to work at their best, membranes must be semi-fluid to allow the proteins freedom of movement within the membrane. So the proteins are continually changing their shape within the membrane. They're moving from side to side within the membrane. They're moving up and down. Sometimes they're projecting out of the membrane. At another millisecond moment, they're not. And so most of the work of the cell is being done by membrane proteins. And for the membranes to have the appropriate microenvironments to keep the proteins working optimally, including a certain degree of fluidity, they need sufficient amounts of omega-3, EPA, and DHA. So if you look on the lower right here, you'll see appearing that here's more of the microstructure of the membrane. And you can see those two big pink bodies are proteins. And then the two sets of layers that span those proteins are lipids, many of which are phospholipids that carry EPA and DHA and help to make the membrane semi-fluid as well as conducive to the functioning of the proteins. And at the synapse, at the nerve cell synapses, of which we have up to 1,000 trillion in the brain, if it's healthy, cell membranes determine practically the entire range of functional capacity where one nerve cell meets the other. So the conduction of the electrical stimulus coming down the nerve cell to the synapse, it depends on having a semi-fluid membrane. The generation of energy in the mitochondria, which are double membrane structures, requires them. The packaging and release of neurotransmitters in those little bubbles you'll see there occurs within membranes, and those membrane packets migrate to and fuse with the outer membrane to release the transmitters. And then lastly, on the other side, at the receiving side, there are receptor molecules that respond to these specific neurotransmitters and which are also embedded in a membrane that requires EPA and DHA. And just to lead into what I'm going to be doing next, the synapse structure and function also requires phosphatidylserine, PS. So PS works very closely with the omega-3s to allow for the cell membrane systems and especially for the synaptic system to work. So you can easily get your omega-3 status measured by spending $49.99 to a company called Omega Quant, and they will send you a measure of what's called your omega-3 index. And if it's over 8, you're not doing too badly. You want to get it to between 8 and 11 or 12. If you're below 8, you're at risk of difficulties with cardiovascular problems, as well as brain problems, and all sorts of out of control inflammatory problems all around the body, etc. So 8 is the threshold, and Americans are averaging 5.1. People with psychiatric issues, patients with psychiatric issues, tend to measure at in the 3s, way into that red zone, way below 4. Children with attention deficit and learning problems, children with behavioral communication issues can go as low as 1 on their omega-3 index. So it's pretty clear that practically everyone needs to take an EPA plus DHA supplement. And a few years ago, Daniel led the way in doing this SPECT study, where he correlated patterns of blood flow on SPECT, regional patterns of brain blood flow with omega-3 index. And essentially, the study found that the lower the omega-3 index was, the lower the blood flow. Not causal, but certainly suggestive and definitely worthy of further research. And the pattern is pretty clear that omega-3s are absolutely required for healthy blood flow. And the lower the blood flow, the higher the risk for progressing into major memory problems. So we have a very, very powerful omega-3 supplement called Omega-3 Power, which we've had for some time in soft gels, and now we also have it as a beautiful emulsified liquid. Thanks to the connections of Jim Springer, our general manager, and 1 tablespoon of this provides 1,500 milligrams of EPA and DHA, which is the range that you need in order to get your omega-3 index up into a truly protective range. And then Brain and Memory Power Boost is a central product for overall support of the brain. So along with NeuroVite Plus and omega-3 Power, Brain and Memory Power Boost provides broad spectrum protection and overall support for the basic functioning of the brain. So it promotes memory and mental sharpness. It supports healthy mood, facilitates healthy functioning of the synapses and the networks, protects and promotes circulation to the brain, promotes energy generation, and is also loaded with antioxidants. So this is a very, very nice addition to the NeuroVite Plus and the omega-3 supplements. And very conveniently, they are available in packets, in daily packets. You take 2 capsules a day, and with Brain and Body Power, you get 2 of the omega-3 power capsules per day. You get the full 4 capsules of NeuroVite Plus, and you get 4 capsules of Brain and Memory Power Boost, which is the basic program for someone who's not in a whole lot of trouble. But if they really are in trouble, then they need to be recommended to take the max. And this is the one that Daniel and his group used in their study, their trial with retired NFL players. So the max then has double the number of capsules of omega-3 power. So it has 4 soft gels per day with almost 2,900 milligrams of EPA plus DHA. It has the usual dose of NeuroVite Plus, because 4 caps are more than enough of the basics, and it has 50% more of the brain and memory power boost. So you're getting additional amounts of all the goodies that are in brain and memory power boost. So this is the really, really no nonsense combination for someone who has subjective cognitive impairment. And these supplements will benefit not only your brain, but your immune system, your cardiovascular system, your other organ systems, and your body as a whole. So very important to understand that nutrients are so much more versatile than drugs, in that practically every nutrient that I've talked about so far is needed and used by every single one of the 30 or so trillion cells in the body. So when you feed your brain, you're also feeding all of your other organ systems. So we also have a standalone neuro PS, because the more PS you get, the better. So PS then is this phospholipid substance that builds cell membranes. It has a privileged relationship with omega-3 DHA, and it's present in all living things. It's most concentrated in the human brain. So we have it in all our cells, but it's most concentrated in the brain. And there are strong indications that it's even more concentrated in the hippocampus and the gray matter, the regions of the zones of the brain that are most active for memory. And it's vital for the mitochondria to make energy and for the nerve cells to release their neurotransmitters. In a now classic clinical trial with subjects aged over 50, it improved concentration, it improved learning and recall of names, faces, and telephone numbers, and of passages, paragraphs of text, and it improved ability to locate misplaced objects. This was a pioneer trial in that it used TV and video aids for the testing, so that the subjects were able to have very, very easy tests, even though they were quite sophisticated. It has improved attention and behavior in children very consistently, and it's been granted 2 coveted qualified health claims by the FDA for memory decline as we get older and for dementia. That doesn't mean that the FDA endorses it, but the FDA has grudgingly conceded that PS may have benefits to offer for those conditions. And on PET scanning, PS can improve glucose utilization, which is an indicator of energy generation in the brain. So here's a woman with severe Alzheimer's. The top 3 scans indicate 3 zones of her brain in which at the beginning she had very low energy generation. And then on 500 milligrams PS after 3 weeks, she was showing those yellow and red zones, which indicated very markedly enhanced energy generation. And this is consistent with what we know about PS, because we know that PS is very important for mitochondrial function. So then the doctors, Daniel and the Amen docs, asked me that since there are so many patients who don't like to take capsules, could I make a powder that would combine the NeuroVite Plus and the brain and memory power boost? And so I did that and added in some extra PS. And this means now that someone who doesn't like to take capsules can take the BRIGHTMINDS memory powder, which is designed to cover practically all of the 12 risk factors, and they can take the omega-3 power liquid emulsion. For technical reasons, we can't get omega-3s in sufficient amounts into this type of powder. So they can take this and they can take the liquid emulsion omega-3, and they get a very, very nice BRIGHTMINDS program that way. Notice that it has 300 milligrams of PS, which is the full clinical dose. I take 600 milligrams myself. And it has a very healthy 750 milligrams of acetylcarnitine, which is very, very important for energy generation in the brain. It also has ginkgo. We wanted to put more, but ginkgo is very bitter, so we had to hold it at 80 milligrams. The Brain and Memory Power Boost actually has more ginkgo than that. And the brain curcumins is a product that I suggested we carry a few years back because the curcumins have tremendous potential for benefiting human health. They are incredibly good antioxidants. They're fantastic anti-inflammatories. That is, they regulate healthy inflammation in a very efficient way. But if you just buy turmeric root powder, you're not going to get a very good amount of curcumins into your cells. They go into cell membranes, by the way, just so you know. Very advanced technology was used to develop an extract at UCLA, and it's called Longvita. It's excellently absorbed. And at first, the first findings were that it improved what's called working memory, that is, memory while being distracted, while being tested distracted. But then recently, there have been also findings that it improves subjective cognitive impairment in middle-aged and elderly subjects versus a placebo. So now this product deserves the full credentials for memory, along with the ones we talked about before. And of course, with memory issues, no one can pretend that taking supplements is going to solve your memory problem. But the broader the program, the better. The more supplements you take that are clinically proven to benefit memory, the better the chance you have of overcoming those risk factors and rescuing your memory. And then Happy Saffron Plus is one of my favorites, and certainly Daniel's favorite. In his family, there's a strong cultural link to it going all the way back. And it consists of this beautiful, highly concentrated saffron extract, which is very, very, really excellent for mood. And it contains the Longvita curcumin, which we've now said is good for memory. And it contains zinc, which is good for brain function across the board. But recently, the clinical trials on saffron are showing a trend, which is that saffron can also benefit memory. So taking a single dose, or better still, a double dose of the Happy Saffron Plus may well be a really powerful addition to the basic program for memory, because you're getting a very healthy allowance of the Longvita curcumins, and you're getting the saffron, and that could be very, very nice. So just to conclude then, today is the day to get to work on your memory. If you believe that your memory is not as powerful now as it was when you were 22 years old, which is about when brain function peaks, get to work on those Bright Minds risk factors, integrate exercise into your daily lifestyle. And there's a consensus now that, first of all, exercise does improve memory. So the consensus is 150 minutes per week of aerobic, at least, 2 days per week of strength exercises, and doing balance exercises, particularly if you're older, on a more or less daily basis. Upgrade your diet with nutrient-dense antioxidants and anti-inflammatory foods, using the Memory Rescue book to help you, and use science-based dietary supplements such as we offer from BrainMD. And if you're at the point where memory loss is blocking your productivity and you know it's interfering with your quality of life, consider checking in with the Amen clinics and getting onto the full professional memory rescue protocol. They'll begin by looking at all of your lab numbers and lab numbers that nobody else measures really, and then fixing all the nutrient levels that are wrong and doing the SPECT and putting you into a really comprehensive memory rescue personalized program. So that's it. And thanks for your participation.
Hey, Paris. That was really a great lecture. Thank you, my friend. There's so much. I was reading the review article you sent me on saffron because there's a new study out today on PMS. And I'm just like, from PMS to eyesight to blood sugar to memory to mood, I'm like going to get saffron bulbs and start planting them around my house. Well, we only have a couple of minutes. Jim, are there any questions in the chat that we should give to Dr. Kidd or myself?
There are, and you know what, we're going to go, we only have a couple of minutes here, so we're going to go back and we're going to answer all the questions that were in the chat, but I've got a couple of them here. My 70-year-old, Jessica asked, my 70-year-old mother is starting to show signs of memory decline. I think memory-focused supplements would be beneficial for her, but she's skeptical about supplements in general. How can I convince her to give them a try?
Have her watch this.
Go ahead, Dan.
Have her watch this lecture.
Good.
Well,
okay.
Well, yeah. And then the other thing, is that if it's your mom, it's definitely worth getting her to the Amen Clinic nearest her, because the Amen Clinic docs are so professional. They're so friendly. The staff is so supportive. I took a friend of mine recently to an Amen Clinic, and we were both so thrilled by the level of attention and professionalism that he experienced. So best to take them to the Amen Clinic and get them properly assessed.
Awesome, good deal. And we have time for one more. Dr. Ruth, Mary Allen asks, is there a correlation between the change in the quality of foods from rigorous agriculture recently and an increase in memory loss due to a reduction in nutrients?
Well, let me tackle that one, Daniel. Yes, there is a correlation in the sense that catastrophic memory loss, such as dementias, are a relatively modern phenomenon. We don't see that level and incidence in history, at least not beyond the past 80 to 90 years. And the overall quality of foods now is such that they're not at all nutrient dense. The soils are depleted. The sprays that they use are incredibly toxic and tend to pull nutrients out of the plants anyway. So there have been numerous studies that compare organic foods, organically grown foods, to non-organically grown foods, and found that the organics are absolutely superior in content of minerals like magnesium and B vitamins and zinc and so on. So we can't prove that there is a direct cause. There's not a direct causal link, but the issue, and why I did that slide on the stressors, is that when you look at those stressors, they're all modern living. They're modern living, and so we have to face the fact that this is what we confront over the course of our lifespan, and we can fix it with the help of the Amen clinics and with proper diet. Exercise is very, very important, and with science-based supplements, in preference over supplements that someone tells you is going to be good for you, because they think so.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, as well as people need to start getting obsessed with their brain and the health of their brain, because it makes every decision you make. And, that's why, our day-to-day business is to help people have better brains, because when you do, you have a better life. So I'm so thrilled. You know, we had so many people sign up. Bless you all. We hope you're staying safe. There was one question about post-COVID brain fog. And, you know, I'd go after all of the Bright Minds risk factors and, you know, perhaps consider Bright Minds powder with omega-3 fatty acids. I take the Bright Minds powder every day. It took my supplements from 22 a day to 14, and I just love it. I also, in my Bright Mind, in my shake every morning that Tana makes me make for her, smart mushrooms, neurogreens, and the Bright Minds powder using our chocolate protein powder.
And blueberries, right?
And blueberries, organic blueberries from Costco. Costco also has this organic mixed berry blend that's really great. You know, getting well isn't hard, and it tastes delicious. You just gotta find 20, you know, foods or recipes you love that love you back. And that's just a major message that we want to give to all of you. So thank you for coming today. We wish you well. We'll be back next month. So it's love next month, Paris. What can we do to honor Valentine's Day and blood flow and love and relationships?
I'm sure you and I and Jim will work something out. Us and the team, the marvelous team that we have at BrainMD, I'm sure we'll work out a very nice topic.
Yeah, chocolate for sure. I think we should have chocolate in there. Anyways, take care, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone. We're going to
Thanks,
put that
everyone.
code up for BrainMD just for a couple of minutes, and we'll send it an email. Thanks, everybody.